And I don't know figures, but the massive majority of bison meat has been grain finished. The grass finished segment of the industry is still pretty small. So, and it's there again. That's something that has its place. Grass finished is not as easy to do on a national marketing wide type basis. It's got it's more of a niche type, well, not niche, but more of a localized market than what we're dealing with. And so we're marketing our bison go to all 50 states, year round fresh product, and that's very difficult to do with a strictly grass finished diet, to have year round fresh product. And so there's logistical issues that fall into place with that.
And actually the Bison Association is developing a white paper right now on that very topic, so that when consumers come to the National Bison Association, the Bison Association says, here's why people are doing what they're doing as far as grain finishing or grass finishing. Yeah, and in some way, so Pat has some background in grass finishing cattle as well, so he'll have some experience to share from that perspective, I think, as well. But yeah, so grain finished bison most typically are finished a shorter period of time with less grain as a percentage of the diet than typical cattle rations or cattle finishing programs. So less grain in the diet and shorter periods of time, generally. The main objectives of grain finishing, I wonder if you'll pick up my stomach growling on that.
Yeah.
There's a couple main objectives of grain finishing for bison. One of them is to have a consistent, high quality product on a available throughout the year, 12 months of the year, on a fresh basis. There's a lot of, particularly restaurant customers, that will only buy fresh meat for their restaurants. Now I'm talking white tablecloth, high-end restaurants that are getting maybe $40 for a steak on the menu. And they can't afford to have a steak come back to their kitchen because somebody didn't like it. It was too tough. There was something wrong with it, that sort of thing. If that happens very many times, you lose that customer, and you may never get them back. Mm-hmm. That's how finicky those very high-end restaurants particularly are in a lot of cases. So fresh, consistent, high-quality product on a year-round basis. And then there is an element of visual appeal on the fat. And typically, you're going to have a whiter fat off of animals that have been grain finished for some period of time. Mm-hmm. So there's an eye appeal that has an effect in the marketplace.
Yep.
Flavor?
Well, the consistency. So you're going to get a more consistent flavor. And I'm not saying that it's a better flavor per se, but it's going to be more consistent. Mm-hmm. So that when a customer buys product in a grocery store, they can expect basically the same flavor from that product every time they buy it. Or same thing in a restaurant. They order a bison steak, they expect it to taste a certain way. And with that grain finishing element, it's going to be more consistent that way.
Yeah. Grass finish, you get a different flavor profile, and that will change from your time of harvest. It'll change from ranch to ranch. It's very dependent upon the forage that animal's been eating. And so if as a private consumer you bought a grass finished animal, that came off of the same type of forage every year, your steak would taste the same every year. But it's not that easy. There's a lot of art to it. There's a lot of art to it with just finishing, period. But with a grass finish, you don't have as much control per se with the grazing, because you could have a dry year and that's changing your plants that they're finishing on. You could have an extremely wet year and that changes the plants that they're finishing on at the time frame you're shooting for finish. And it's very, very difficult for to manage your fresh product with a grass finish type operation.
And we're pretty sensitive to what the customer, how they react to our product. I mean, we've been marketing bison meat for over 50 years, and we have had the experience where demanding customers will take bison meat off their menu in a restaurant because there was something wrong with it, they thought. Yeah. So we actually do market some grass finished product. We also sell some direct to consumer here off the ranch. If we give them a choice, if they want it right off the grass, we make that available to them. By far the majority of our customers prefer a grain finish, but we like to say that they're pasture raised and grain finished. Last couple of years?
Yeah, so we've been playing with it, small numbers, maybe a couple hundred head for a couple years. And then this last year we decided, this is the right way to go. We're going to bring, if an animal's born on the ranch, it doesn't leave the ranch until it's ready to go to slaughter. And so everything stays home now. Number one, we did it through experimentation on our own end, knowing we can do it. But we've talked to other producers that finish at home and have great success with it, and don't have problems that might be associated with a traditional feedlot.
So because of their more wild behavior, natural behavior, they require a little bit more space.
Yep.
And so we try and accommodate that.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So our finishing operation here at the ranch, the animals get free choice alfalfa hay, free choice grass hay, and free choice of the wheat mid-based pellet that we feed. And I monitor their consumption on a weekly basis. I know what they're consuming, and yeah, they don't overeat. They regulate themselves quite well. And we don't get into the acidosis. Even on our finished animals, we don't get into the acidosis problems that you get into with finishing, like in a feedlot scenario with beef cattle. And so we let them do their thing. And as long as we keep the feed in front of them, they perform well and are happy doing it. So, we target pens of about 50 head, so it's not a large group that's in a pen, and they get about 800 square feet to an animal. And so
they're running in an acre, basically.
We're 45,000 square foot is our smallest pen that we feed 55 head in, and there's a lot of room in there for them. I mean, there's an end they'll go lay down in, and then they go eat in, and they run and play and move around quite a bit. The animals here, even the animals on feed, their life is fantastic, except for one day. and even the animals on feed, they're not out on pasture, but I mean, you'll drive up there and they'll be playing and having a great time. They'll scream to one end of the pen and up on a pile of dirt and down and bucking and kicking and grunting and carrying on. And so there's trade-offs. And I mean, our animals, if they were terribly unhappy, they wouldn't perform the way they do on feed. We don't, we're not, there's no daily They don't get a daily antibiotic or anything that's part of their feed additive. If an animal gets sick, good animal husbandry, we treat the animal for their sickness and get on with things. And so it's not like they're on a maintenance, we're daily feeding them drugs to maintain their gut function and keep them, resistant to disease and things like that. So with our feeding operation, we're raising more animals out on the range. Instead of finishing those animals on the range, we'd be running a smaller amount of breed cows because our forage base is what we have. And so there's trade-offs there. We can raise more animals and finish on feed, or we can raise less animals and do the grass finish thing. And for a great number of years, raising bison was the premium. There wasn't necessarily a premium between grass finished bison and grain finished bison. It was bison. That was where your premium occurred. So